Hello, everybody. My name is Aaron Knoll, and I am back in the hosting chair. Welcome back to the second part of our double match event, the Movie Battleground Blitz. If you guys have not checked out the first half of this event, which was myself entering the Battleground, taking on Noah McCausland, I'm sure it was a great match. Go ahead and check it out after you check out this match, because we are following up that fun match with another fun match between two guys who are currently in the 0-1 bracket, but both had some great game last time. We have Shaun Hunter taking on Abel de Leeuw. In Shaun's case, he obviously made his debut in our opening week against Grant Gregory, who, for those of you who have been around for a while longer in Battleground, will remember prior to the hiatus, he was not only at one point a champion, but he was also undefeated. The only reason he lost the belt was because he could not make time to play matches, and so it was taken back from him. But he never actually lost a match. Shaun took him to the limit, so much so that Grant said it might have been the toughest match he ever played. Shaun then went on to have a very good win against Jonathan to find himself here. In Abel's case, he was a last-minute replacement for a competitor who had to drop, and despite the fact that he came in, was probably buzzed, and had half a clue of what he was doing, he still pulled out a great victory against Shannon Briggs. And now these two guys, who are not only had a little good run themselves on our sister channel in the TM Geek tournament, surprising people, are here to continue it. Which one of these guys will make it into the semifinals and one step closer to a title match? I'm not going to waste any more of your time because I have a lot of it tonight. Let's go ahead and get into it. Introducing first, with a record that deflates the purpose of the 0-1 bracket, but here we are. He is one win, no defeats. He is Apex Abel de Leeuw. Abel, how's it going? And he is muted. We're off to a great start. You're muted. I cannot hear a thing you've said.
Cool.
This is a great start.
Did I look good though?
You looked the part. You were saying something.
Fair enough. I did. There was words coming out of my mouth, but no. You said like 0-1 bracket. I was like, wait, what happened last time? Did I lose? No, I won.
No.
Yeah,
you won.
You did book me for the right match, right? This is what we're doing.
Yes. You were put in the bracket of people who lost the first time, but you weren't there for the first time, so you technically haven't lost. Like I said, this tournament's been a bit of a shit show. Here we are. We got a winner in the 0-1 bracket. How's it going, sir? You took on Shannon Briggs, who obviously, in both your match and his previous match with Amadou Moses, went to the blind round. It got to be the unluckiest competitor we've had so far, but you pulled out a solid victory showing your stuff. How are you feeling coming into this against Shaun?
Well, I feel bad for the guy because he was obviously a lot more passionate about the stuff that we were talking about than I was. I don't know. I guess I just rambled more, which is what I'm planning to do tonight. I've had a couple actually, and we'll see how far that takes me.
Absolutely. I like the attitude. If anything, just drink your way to the end. One way or the other, it'll still be enjoyable.
Mm-hmm. I drink and I know things. That's for sure.
All right. I'm going to go ahead and send you to the back for just a moment and introduce your competitor, entering with a record of 1 win, 1 defeat. He is a man known for writing on very nice-looking plates, although he will not require those tonight. He is Shaun Hunter. Shaun, how's it going?
Hello, it's going good. Happy to be back. I'm not drinking. I'm just drinking water, so I don't know how much rambling I'll be doing.
We will see what helps more, water or alcohol. This, this is a mental sport. I'm going to give myself that credibility and say that I am working you guys hard here. So we'll see what works out. Alcohol or water, we'll send this to studies afterwards. So as I said, man, you've had 2 tough matches coming into this. Obviously, debuting against a champ, you were 1 of 5. And even though you didn't win, you certainly held your own against him enough to impress the champ in all intents and purposes. And then you pulled a very good win against Jonathan, a near knockout even, with Jonathan escaping with that point to just take that away from you. So how much confidence does that give you coming in here?
I'm feeling confident. I definitely put my work into this match. Man, it's a lot of time preparing for these debates. It's one thing to see people debate online, and then there's another thing to like actually like sit down and figure out what you want to say, what your argument is. It's a lot of work, but I'm happy to be here and fight once more.
Absolutely. Well, let's not kill your time anymore. Otherwise, we'll lose Abel to the Heineken. I'm going to go ahead and bring him in, and let's get this Heineken, right? That is your drink of choice. I'm going off the
Yeah,
bottle.
for sure. Still looking for that sponsorship deal if anyone wants to hit me up.
Absolutely. I'll take a bit of that pie. They got good money, man. We're going to go ahead and get into this. Movie Battleground is a game that is a best of 5 rounds. It is the first to 3 points to win. Each round of debate is worth 1 point. If a competitor happens to get 3 points in a row, that will be an automatic victory by knockout. If we have a tie after 4 rounds, we will go to the blind round, which both of these competitors are very familiar with. In terms of our first 4 rounds, they were given the questions ahead of time. They were given as much time as they chose to use to prep for it. The way that it'll work is they will get a 60-second opening argument to establish their choice. Then they will have 2 minutes to kind of speak and expand on it and get a little more info out there before we go into the 4-minute open debate. That's where they'll scratch, claw, and have a go at each other to get as many points in as possible to impress our judges, followed by a 1-minute closing argument. Following that, I have 3 great judges backstage in the form of Chris, Stacy, and Will. They will come on screen and decide off of the arguments given who gets the point for that round. With that said, guys, do we have any questions or are we ready to go?
Ready to rock.
Well, it sounds like you put a lot of work in, so I'm a little nervous.
All right, keep the confidence up as we'll go ahead and get into it. And obviously, early January is a dumpster fire for movies that are coming out in the new year. I mean, it just look for the next fucking shit horror film and a failed franchise attempt. And anyone remember Monster Trucks from a few years ago? That was pretty bad. But the Oscar contenders take advantage to try and get that wider release and get more eyes on it. And one of those films that is currently doing that, which I believe at this point has just recently gone to Apple TV Plus, is the new film of The Tragedy of Macbeth, directed by one half of the Coen brothers in Joel Coen and starring the man we are about to talk about, Mr. Denzel Washington. He is an actor who is beloved and known by many, but a lot of his films tend to slip under the radar. And so we decided to ask, what is Denzel Washington's most underrated film? So with that said, behind the scenes, Shaun, because of the way the random wheel was spun all those months ago, you have been decided as the favorite of this match. You opted to go first on questions 2 and 4, which means, Abel, you are up first for your 60-second opening, as I will go ahead and bring up your timer, and it will continue ticking when you start speaking.
That was a lot of preamble, bro. I got you. We're talking about Denzel. We all know Denzel. Why do we know Denzel? Denzel's been working in Hollywood for 40 years. Let that sink in for a second. 40 years this guy's been working. We all consider him to be a great actor, and, rightfully so. He's been nominated for 7 acting Oscars, okay? So he even received a Best Picture nomination for his directorial efforts on Fences. He has been a staple for decades. So it's really hard for any of his movies to really fly under the radar. But talking about a movie that has a lot to do with radars, in my opinion, the movie that is most wrongfully overshadowed of his is Crimson Tide, 1995's Crimson Tide. It is an amazing movie. It has great characters, great writing, great suspense, great acting. I don't want to give away the full pie now. I'm just saying this is his most underrated movie of his, as I just established, 40-year career. Cheers.
All right, and that'll be time on the 1-minute opening. Shaun, we go over to you.
So the question is, what is Denzel Washington's most underrated film? He's made a lot of films. The film I have picked is The Book of Eli, which came out in 2010. I question the movie's 48% on Rotten Tomatoes and 6.9% or 6.9 score on IMDb. for this film. It is horribly underrated. Not a lot of people went to go watch it when it first came out. Critics and audiences both did not like it, but over the years, this film is just gone better and better, especially in my eyes. There is so much to like about this film. Denzel's performance, the action. It's not just a generic post-apocalyptic film. There's so much to like, and it should have been more appreciated when it came out, and it is by far his most underappreciated film by Denzel Washington.
All right, that'll be the end of Shaun's 1 minute. We got Crimson Tide versus the Book of Eli. Abel, back to you for 2 minutes.
2 minutes?
I mean, you can give it up at any point, but yes, you have up to 2 minutes. Keep it up for however long you like.
It's all good, bro. Like, listen, when we talk about actors that are as well renowned as Denzel, okay, you don't even have to say his last name. You say Denzel. Everybody knows who you're talking about. So, like, the term underrated is like a really tricky subject. Do you know what I mean? The man never phones in a performance, and he can elevate even the most box standard material. I mean, look at Book of Eli. But why did I choose Crimson Tide? It is not only Denzel's most underrated movie, but it's also one of the most underrated action thrillers of all time. And one of the biggest reasons for this is a few years earlier, John McTiernan's Hunt for Red October was released. And that had a very similar premise. It garnered rave reviews, had a global box office success. And the reason that it overshadowed Crimson Tide is because that was really the 90s movie that took place in a submarine. And now, whenever you talk about like action thrillers on a submarine, everyone always mentions Hunt for Red October. No one goes to Crimson Tide. But I actually think Crimson Tide might be the better movie. I know that might be like a little bit controversial, but hey, we're here to talk movie opinions, so I won't shy away from it. Crimson Tide has sophisticated writing, great dynamic between the cast, amazing action sequences that build up great suspense, and it just doesn't get mentioned in the pantheon of like great action thrillers, which is where I think it should be. It should be at the top of the list, maybe even Tony Scott's best movie. But even Tony Scott, like within his own filmography, people don't really talk about this movie that much. That is because the movie that had such a similar premise came out 5 years before, and that is the one that over the years has gotten a lot more attention than this movie, which is why it just got overshadowed, and for all the wrong reasons, in my opinion. So that is, I'll just leave it at that. Take another beer.
All right, Shaun, as it counts down to 0, once the timer ticks over, you can begin your 2 minutes.
Crimson Tide is not underrated. It is properly rated. It is one of Tony Scott's best films. When people bring up Tony Scott in his top 3, they talk about Crimson Tide. This film was nominated for 3 Academy Awards. It has amazing acting by both Denzel Washington and Gene Hackman. In an uncredited, Quentin Tarantino was uncredited for writing a lot of the dialogue for this film. That just makes it pop off the screen. It is such a good film. No one looks back and thinks like this movie, like the movie did well. No one thinks it didn't do well box office wise, or no one thinks that it was a bad film. Like the popularity of this film hasn't grown over time. It was big when it came out. It has been big in the years afterwards. To this day, it's still regarded as a very good film. It made $157 million, and this is in 1995 money. Like, this film did well. It was successful. It was one of the top films of the year. Robert Ebert, one of his quotes that he said about this film, he said, "This is the rare kind of war movie that not only thrills people while they're watching it, but invites them to leave the theater actually discussing the issues." And he ultimately gave the film 3.5 stars out of 4. This was a very, like, everyone was very positive about this film. It has an 88% on Rotten Tomatoes, 83% audience score. It's a very good film. The Book of Eli, a lot of people, critics and audience, bashed it when it came out for thinking it was generic post-apocalyptic film. A lot of people are now looking back at Book of Eli and watching it over the years, knowing how good it was and how wrong they were back in the day, and I wish more people understood how good of a film Book of Eli was. It is truly underrated. It has some really good performances in it. Denzel Washington is just chewing up the scenery, and he's kicking ass in an amazing action role, and Gary Oldman is just killing it as the bad guy of the flick.
And time. All right, we're going to go into the 4-minute open debate. The timer will restart when the first person speaks.
I like the fact that you devoted most of your time to like bashing my movie or my arguments, most like. I just have a couple of things to say to that. It might have gotten nominated for 3 Oscars, but can you name those Oscars? They were all technical awards. It was like sound editing, sound mixing. Nobody gives a crap about those. Okay.
I think a lot of people give a crap about those, especially
the guys
who
who are
work on those
actually in
films.
the business. The guys are actually in the business. No one in the general audience gives a crap about those awards. Okay. People tune out the second they hit the big 6. Also, nobody knows that QT had that writing or like that uncredited writing role. Nobody knows this. Like, it just got lost in the shuffle. What you said, actually, I like, thank you for that. I really like supported my argument. The popularity hasn't grown for this movie. It really got lost in the shuffle over time, because over time it got overshadowed by the movie that came out 5 years before it. Also, you talk about the box office. It made the same amount of money as Book of Eli, but this movie came out in May. Book of Eli came out in January, where it had 0 competition. So I don't know, man. That kind of feels like it evens the playing field a little bit.
Adjusted for inflation, it did not make the same amount of money. Crimson Tide made a lot more, especially since it came out almost 15 years before the Book of Eli. And talking about Quentin Tarantino being uncredited, that doesn't change the fact that the writing in this film was really, really good. Especially in scenes where you see Denzel Washington and Gene Hackman just go at each other, just fighting. It doesn't matter if no one talks about it. The writing in this film is still very good. And critics and audience members at that time thought it was very good. The film came out and no one thought, this is a bad film. We don't like this film. No, people enjoyed the film. They've liked the film and continue to like the film. Whereas Book of Eli, majority of critics and audience members did not like the film when it came out. They didn't understand it. They thought it was just a generic action film. The themes in Book of Eli are so amazing and a welcome addition to post-apocalyptic films. Especially, like, everyone watching that film, you had no idea Denzel was blind throughout that whole film. And going back and watching that film, you appreciate all the little subtle acting choices that he made throughout that film. Knowing that, oh shit, he was blind the whole time. Knowing that, spoiler alert, he's carrying the last version of the Bible on Earth. Like, it was horribly underappreciated and is still underrated. Book of Eli is severely underrated, whereas Crimson Tide has been properly rated since it came out. And you keep comparing it to The Hunt for Red October. Just because you're comparing it to that film doesn't mean it's underrated. The question is, which is Denzel Washington's most underrated film?
Action thrillers of all time, and it really isn't. Like, it doesn't get into the conversation at all when really it should. Book of Eli, like, I'm sorry, man. I gotta bash this movie because it's not good. And you could have chosen so many like good Denzel movies that have gone under the radar. But Book of Eli, man, it's just a box standard apocalyptic movie. And you say Gary Oldman's good in that movie. He's just, buddy, he's been in so many movies where he played like an eccentric bad guy.
And he's so good at playing the eccentric bad guy.
All of them are better than this one.
He plays such a creepy bad guy in this film, and I don't think this is a cookie cutter film. Is pretty much what I think you're saying. Like, just Denzel Washington's character being blind, having the Bible and all this stuff. It's a very interesting story.
No, the plot twist at the end, it just really does nothing for the whole movie. It's just like, it just meanders and it goes. The central character really has nothing going for him. The villain is just box standard.
I
It's
don't
not
think
even-
it meanders or goes. I think it's a very tightly paced film, and I also think that the action, like, no one really saw Denzel as an action star before. And I'm talking about like a physical, like, with a weapon action star. This is 2010 Denzel using machete. That barroom fight scene in this film is epic. It's such an epic action film.
And time. All right, getting heated at the end there. We'll go ahead and get into the closing arguments. Abel, you're up first. One last minute for you.
There you go. In terms of being underrated, I think we should look at what is it that you want to rate a movie as. Do you want to rate a box standard movie as slightly better than what it was first perceived as? Or do you want to look at a movie and say, wow, this should actually be included in the pantheon of best action thrillers of all time, when really it doesn't get involved in that conversation at all? This is a movie that should be up there as like the best of Denzel, when really nobody talks about it. It should be up there as the best of Tony Scott. It should be up there as the best of action thrillers of the 90s and really of all time. So I really think that in terms of being underrated, especially with an actor like Denzel, you should really aim a little higher than just to say, oh, this pretty like box standard movie that nobody really gave a shit about, to be honest, rightfully so, should be maybe put a couple of pegs higher. I'm saying with an actor like Denzel, you have to aim for the moon, shoot at the stars, and say, this guy deserves all the praise. This movie is one of the best around.
All right, that will be time. Shaun, you get the final say. 1 minute on the clock when you speak.
The Book of Eli is Denzel Washington's most underrated film. When it came out, not a lot of people liked it. It has superb action, as I said, that barroom fight scene, Denzel's subtle performance within the film, especially when he's quoting Bible verses and you have no idea what's the deal with his character throughout the film. Gary Oldman absolutely crushes it. The twist at the end is just amazing. The score is terrific. This film is so underrated. It's just looking at the audience score and what critics and audience members thought of it when it came out, and even to today, more people have to check out this film. Crimson Tide is properly rated, and it's not one of the best action films, like Abel said. It is one of the better Denzel films, but I wouldn't even put this in his top 5 or top 10. It's just a properly rated Denzel film, with Gene Hackman just crushing it. The dialogue is superb, and the way audiences and critics felt about it when it first came out, they still think about it to this day. It's properly rated, not underrated.
And time. All right, guys, a great opening round. I'm going to go ahead and send both of you to the back to await your judgment as I go ahead and bring in our 3 judges. So I have just a couple quick fact checks while our judges are making their kind of last thoughts. Denzel was not nominated for 7 acting Oscars. He's been nominated for 8. He has 2 supporting actor nominations for Cry Freedom and Glory. He has 6 for lead actor for Malcolm X, The Hurricane, Training Day, Flight, Fences, and Roman J. Israel Esquire. He won 2 of those 8, winning supporting actor for Glory and best actor for Training Day. Denzel Washington has been around for over 40 years. He began actively working in 1975, beginning in stage work before moving into film cinema about 10 years later. The box office of the films did come up a lot. So obviously, if you look at Wikipedia, it shows that, or Box Office Mojo or anything like that, it does show that these films made money. However, if you do a little bit of further math, if you do the rough numbers that I've used for a number of years, just so people know what I'm talking about when I say this, is generally speaking, a film's marketing budget is 50% of its production budget added back on, and a theater outtake of its gross is about 33%. Now, that is definitely a negotiable number, but that's a pretty solid average to give you an idea of what the film did. When you put it like that, The Book of Eli actually lost just over $15 million for the studio, whereas Crimson Tide did bring in a total gross of just under $40 million, so one was more successful than the other. That also had partially to do with the budget. Crimson Tide was nominated for 3 Academy Awards. Abel actually hit them all on the head. It was sound mixing, sound editing, and film editing. were the three that it was nominated for. And then finally, when talking about Rotten Tomatoes, The Book of Eli has a 46% critic-like rating consensus. As a reminder for those, Rotten Tomatoes is not an actual score. It is just a consensus of how many people who have submitted a review actually like it. So 46% for critics, 64% for audiences. Crimson Tide has an 88% for critics and an 83% for audiences. But with all that said, it is focused on the arguments, not the slight little facts and details. So, Mr. Diaz, I go to you first. As concise as you can get it for me, who gets your vote and what was the main point that sold you?
So in the end, Shaun won it for me. In the end, he would manage to bring out more fat. He made captured the audience on the way the audience judged pretty sure the fat had been talked about. And I felt like he was able to defend everything I've ever saying about Crimson Tide and defending both sides of it. So Shaun,
All right, so the first vote does go to Shaun. Stacey, I go to you. Who gets your vote and what was the main thing that sold you?
Shaun won it for me too. They convinced me Crimson Tide is the better movie, but Book of Eli is more underrated based on the arguments. The big things were the Rotten Tomatoes scores, and I haven't seen either movie, so I can't speak to like their quality and what they should be rated, but he did paint a very interesting picture of Book of Eli that made me think that perhaps it was not understood when it came out and was therefore very underrated, whereas I know, even though I haven't seen Crimson Tide, that it was definitely well respected.
All right. Well, I do want to say, since it's your first time here, welcome. Thank you for being with us, but we will hear your opinions on the next question as we do have a winner. I will go ahead and send you guys to the back and bring back in our competitors as we move on to question number 2. And as we were talking about Oscar favorites and Oscar nominees, one of the big potential frontrunners for a lot of major awards this year is the film Belfast, as directed by Kenneth Branagh. Obviously, a lot of people love the film. It is considered a frontrunner for Best Picture, in addition to maybe not a frontrunner for winning any of them, but a large portion of the cast, specifically the adult actors in Katrina Balfe, Jamie Dornan, Kieran Hines, and Judi Dench all could possibly get nominated depending on how things shake out. And it's high time that Branagh, a director who has never won an Academy Award, potentially get that type of respect put on him. And so we asked the question, what is the best film directed by Kenneth Branagh? And there are very few times where I've had to say this, but I do feel like I have to give this preface warning. One of these answers is a very non-traditional answer, and so I beg with my judges, please do not write any competitor off based on their choice alone. Please allow the argument to speak for them. With that said, Shaun, because you were the favorite and elected to go first on this question, you will be up first. I'm going to go ahead and bring your timer up, disappear, and it will start when you begin speaking.
I'm a man of tradition, so I went with Kenneth Branagh's 1996 film, Hamlet. It is one of his best films. It was nominated for 4 Academy Awards. Kenneth Branagh directed, wrote, and starred in the film. I guess this is like Kenneth Branagh's Citizen Kane. I feel like this film helped raise Kenneth Branagh's star, put him more so on the map. If you love Shakespeare, if you love Hamlet, you will love this play. This is a 4-hour Hamlet film. It is, every word from the play is in this film. It is not modernized at all. It's not modern English at all. The sets, the cast of A-list actors, this film is just fantastic. Kenneth Branagh is amazing as Hamlet, and his direction, like, I don't think anyone else could have directed such a good adaptation of Hamlet as Kenneth Branagh. This is his best film.
All right, so as the time winds down, I will give it a pause for Abel to catch a moment with his thoughts, and it will restart when you begin speaking.
With my beer, most likely.
Whatever your thoughts are, man.
That's debating juice. Listen, Kenneth Branagh is a great actor. Okay, he's an awesome actor. I love seeing him in movies, but we have to come clean here. He's a terrible director. All his movies are dull, lifeless, and uninspired. Like, sure, he can make a semi-decent adaptation of Shakespeare, but he adds absolutely nothing to his movies. He can't direct actors to save his life. And my hope is that this is the movie that finally brought to life his shortcomings as a director. And if that is the case, that it would actually be the best movie for all of us as audience members. So I picked Artemis Fowl. Artemis Fowl is the best movie directed by Kenneth Branagh because it finally showed the world he's not that great of a director. He's actually a very bad director. And this is what he came up with. Yeah, I'm going to take another sip. Cheers.
All right. Once again, I will put out the friendly reminder, especially to you, Diaz. I see your face. Do not judge off the pick, judge off the arguments. With that said, Shaun, you have 2 minutes to expand on Hamlet before we get the gloriousness that is Abel's pick. Go ahead, sir.
The question that is asked is, what is the best film directed by Kenneth Branagh? Best could mean acting, directing, a story, writing, soundtrack, all together, all that together. Hamlet is his best film. And Kenneth Branagh is not a bad director. Hamlet's amazing. Much Ado About Anything is amazing. Thor, I love. And Belfast is getting really good reviews. Artemis Fowl is a bad film. It is everything about it. The directing, the acting, the story, if there even is a story. It's adapted from, I believe, I think it's like YA fantasy novels that I think a lot of people love. A lot of that lore was put into this it was like a 95-minute film of trash. This film is so bad, it was put on Disney Plus. If you look at other films that Disney had throughout the pandemic, they waited to release them in cinemas. But Artemis Fowl was put on Disney Plus. It is a trash bag pile of shit film. The star of the film, I can't remember the actor's name. He's never acted before. It seems like it's a child actor. It seems like someone is off screen giving him his lines. It has the worst acting. Colin Farrell's even bad in the film. Judi Dench is he has all these good actors who are just bad in the film. There's a weird narration throughout the film that's done by Josh Gad's character while he's in prison or something like that, which is also just bad. It's a horrible film. The question is, what is his best film? And that is Hamlet. It has an all-star cast. Kenneth Branagh stars. Kate Winslet's in it. Judi Dench is in it. Billy Crystal. Derek Jacobi. It is great acting. You really feel for Hamlet. Kenneth Branagh plays him so well. You really believe that Hamlet is just like a really just like a bitch. Just the way Kenneth plays him. It's played so well. And the cinematography is amazing. The set design and costumes are also amazing.
All right, Abel, 2 minutes on the clock. Time starts when you speak.
For sure, bro. Listen, movies are made for the audience. Who wants to sit through a 4-hour Hamlet movie? Nobody. This guy, what he did to break out into the directing world was just like coast on Shakespearean stories that everyone knows are classics. Okay. He added absolutely nothing to the movies. He's a great actor, so he was a great actor in those, but that shouldn't take away from the fact that as a director, he was a sore letdown. Now, movies are made for the audience. Okay. He made by far the worst movie of the MCU in its first run. So the first phase of MCU movies. Thor is a terrible movie. He made that terrible Jack Ryan Shadow Recruit. Like every time this guy has tried to step out of its comfort zone, it has really bombed. Okay. Artemis Fowl is the prime example of how this guy cannot direct a movie to save his life. Now, Shaun just said it, and thank you so much. He just rounded off all the cast. He had an incredible cast of great, well-renowned actors to work with. It is a book series of 11 books. So you have all this material to draw from. And this is what he came up with. Okay. it's probably the worst movie, the worst big budget movie that I have ever seen. And that is why it is the best movie directed by Kenneth Branagh, because that is why we now finally know this guy is such a bad director, and he really should never be given that big of a budget again. He just cannot do big Hollywood studio directed movies. If he wants to go off and do like his own tiny like indie movie, that's fine by me. But movies are made for the audience, and his movies just don't have an audience. It is just bad all around. This is why this should be regarded as finally a movie that showed the world, don't watch Kenneth Branagh movies. There you go.
All right, and that is time. We are going to go into the 4-minute opening debate. The time will start when the first person speaks.
Who wants to sit through a 4-hour Hamlet film? People who love Hamlet and people who love Shakespeare. How long has Shakespeare been around for? The play will never go away. Shakespeare's plays, they're here forever. People love Shakespeare. They love his plays. I'd rather sit through an 8-hour version of Hamlet directed by Kenneth Branagh than a 1-hour version of Artemis Fowl. Artemis Fowl is a trash bag.
But he did nothing to make it interesting. The play is a lot better. Every play that has ever been put up of Hamlet or any of the other Shakespearean stories that he's put to film are a lot better as plays.
We're not comparing a play to a film, because plays, they're written for the stage. A film, if you're adapting a play, it's going to be different. It's like adapting a book to a film, right?
He couldn't even bring anything to these Shakespearean classics.
The energy that he brought into this film as a director, the cinematography, the angles, the cost, all of his, no one could have directed this film other than Kenneth Branagh.
He cannot direct actors. He cannot direct like a thorough plot line, like things that his pacing is way off. The guy just cannot direct.
I don't think you've seen Hamlet, because the pacing is not off in this 4-hour version of Hamlet, okay?
Yes,
it zips by, everything connects, especially the scene where Hamlet is talking to his dead father, to his ghost. It's just amazing watching that being adapted to film. That doesn't hit that hard in the play as it does in the film.
He got lucky that his first big break were like all of these Shakespearean movies, because otherwise this guy would, after his first movie, he would have never gotten another one. And now we finally know why, because he cannot direct movies. Okay, he's great as an actor. Keep him as an actor. Let him play whatever quirky characters he wants. He wants to do another.
Clearly could direct films, because he's had all of these films adapted from Shakespeare plays. One of the biggest misses is Artemis Fowl. He hasn't had a whole lot of misses / bombs throughout his very long career. Artemis Fowl, his directing is horrible in Artemis Fowl.
Yes, which is why it's the best movie to finally show everyone.
The question is, what's the best directed play by Kenneth Branagh? The best directed play is Hamlet.
Finally opened audiences' eyes to the fact that this guy cannot direct a movie. This is the best thing that could have ever happened to audiences, because now they know, oh, right, we should never do another big budget Kenneth Branagh movie, because he just can't do it. That is why this is the best movie he's ever done, because now we won't ever have to sit through
this. This is the best flop he's ever done. This is the best, worst directed film he's ever done. But the best directed film is Hamlet, especially if you look at the director. There's some directors who direct actors. They work well with the actors. They can convey what they want on screen to the directors as they're there filming the film. And you get amazing performances from Billy Crystal, Kate Winslet, Judi Dench, Derek Jacobi, Jack Lemmon.
He just got
like lucky. Jack Lemmon is amazing in this film.
All he's ever done is do Shakespeare movies. He did an Agatha Christie.
Because he's good. He's good at directing Shakespeare films. Just like you said, the only good thing he's ever done is directing Shakespeare films. And his best directed film is Hamlet, which is a Shakespeare film.
He got lucky doing a lot of Shakespeare stuff. But
even if he got lucky, the argument, it's still his best directed film. So he got lucky being directing the hell out of Hamlet.
Any other director could have done just as good a job and probably a lot better, because Shakespeare movies.
You think Michael Bay could have done just as good directing Hamlet as Kenneth Branagh? I would
love to see a 90-minute Michael Bay Hamlet movie for sure.
If you actually watch the film, it doesn't even feel like a 4-hour film.
Whoa.
I watched Artemis Fowl. It is awful.
Yes.
There's a whole
it is
subplot
awful.
about
It is
fairies.
awful. And
There's a
now
whole subplot about
everybody knows.
fairies and
Everybody
having a
knows
fairy
he is
war
awful.
that's more interesting than the actual plot of Artemis Fowl.
Well, Kenneth Branagh is the worst thing to happen to that movie. There's nobody that does a worse job on Artemis Fowl than Kenneth Branagh. He's by far the worst thing to happen to that movie.
The people who did the worst job on Artemis Fowl is clearly the studio interference and how they marketed the film, which they only did for like a month or two before the film hit. So Disney is definitely to blame.
And time. That was beautiful. All right, Shaun, you got 1 minute to close. Time starts when you begin speaking.
The best directed film by Kenneth Branagh is Hamlet. Artemis Fowl is horribly directed. It's too short. It's cut up. It's edited poorly. It's clear that it was not under Kenneth Branagh's control, the end product of this film, that there was studio interference in this. It's just horrible performances. The CGI is bad. It just doesn't make sense. Hamlet is an amazing film, especially if you love Shakespeare. This is the best adaptation of Hamlet, and it's because of Kenneth Branagh. Like my opponent said, he's only good at directing films adapted from Shakespeare plays. And this is that film. He gets so much out of the actors, the costuming in the film, the cinematography. There is just so much to love about Kenneth Branagh's Hamlet. And because this film did well, because this film was so well received, this sustained his career so he would get more opportunities in the future. When Marvel wanted to do a Shakespeare-like film, they had him do Thor.
Time. All right. Abel, you have 1 last minute on the clock. Time starts when you begin speaking.
Yep. Kenneth Branagh got lucky, okay? He got lucky that he had the opportunity to work off some of the best material that you could wish for as a director, okay? He just got lucky. He rolled into the business. All of a sudden, he's a big shot director. No, he's not. He's terrible. When Marvel wanted to make a Shakespearean-like Marvel movie, he did Thor, and it was clunky as hell. It's all Dutch angles. The guy doesn't know what he's doing. Then he tried to make an Agatha Christie movie. That's also terrible. And then finally, everyone got to open their eyes and witness how bad of a director he really is. It is Artemis Fowl. Artemis Fowl came out, and oh my God, everyone saw it. Everyone got to see this guy for the fraud he really is. He is actually kind of like his role in Harry Potter, like Gilderoy Lockhart. Everyone thought he was a great director, and then everyone got a peek behind the curtain. Oh my God, he is so bad. Let's not give this guy another fucking Hollywood movie again, another movie whatsoever. Just obliviate
and time
and move on.
All right, there we go. All right, I'm going to go ahead and send both of you guys to the DAC as we await the decision. I will go ahead and bring in our judges. So just a couple quick fact checks from that one. Hamlet was nominated for 4 Academy Awards in Best Adapted Screenplay, Best Art Direction, Best Costume Design, and Best Original Score. It did not win any of those awards, though. Artemis Fowl is a very brief 95 minutes, so if you decide to watch it, at least it's over as soon as it starts. The actor that you guys were speaking of who played Artemis Fowl is Farida Shaw. This was his film debut. He is since, for what it's worth, the movie came out in 2020, but it was filmed in early 2018. He has since only made 1 acting appearance in anything, and it was in a small role in, I believe, a British TV show. The Artemis Fowl film is said to be based on not just the first book, but the first 2 books. The first titular one, Artemis Fowl, as well as the second one, The Arctic Incident. However, the script made numerous changes to the film's characters and lore. However, this was a decision that was actually publicly supported by the book's original author, Owen Colfer, and he was actually used as a consultant as well. So he did have some part in this. And when it comes to talking about Kenneth Branagh directing Shakespearean films, I actually took some time to do a count. So of the 19 films in Kenneth Branagh's directorial career, 5 of them have been direct Shakespeare adaptations. In Henry V, Much Ado About Nothing, Hamlet, Love's Labour's Lost, and As You Like It. He also has In the Bleak Midwinter, which is a film about people putting on a production of Hamlet. He has Thor, which many, including Branagh, would agree is very highly inspired by the Shakespearean style. And in 2018, he directed All Is True, which is a biopic about Shakespeare in which he played Shakespeare. Also, this isn't really a fact, it's just more of a fun thing I came across. When they began production on Artemis Fowl, in Ireland, they built a full-on mansion on which they filmed this movie because they wanted to have it for the franchise. It was torn down in May of 2020 prior to the release of the first film. And that says everything about that. With that said, though, it is based on the argument, so I am going to go to Stacy first. Who gets your vote and what sold you?
I was really, really hoping that Abel would convince me because I thought that was such just a great, ambitious direction to take, but he did not. So Shaun gets my vote because it's best. It's the best, and I don't think Kenneth Branagh is a horrible director that we needed Artemis Fowl to show us, and I wasn't convinced that that's the case. So Shaun gets my vote.
All right. Will, I go to you. Who gets your vote, and what was the main thing that sold you?
And I have to give it to Shaun because I felt that he actually at least argued why that was a good, why that was the best film, not why it's a good example of, of the failings. And this is, beyond the fact that I am a huge Kenneth Branagh fan, both his acting and his directing. I can look past that. I was very intrigued to see what Abel had to say, but unfortunately, he just couldn't sell me on why Artemis Fowl was his best movie.
All right. So with that, the vote will go to Shaun. I'm going to go ahead and send all of you guys to the back and bring back in our competitors. All right, guys. So Abel has switched cameras to make this work. We're going to go ahead and move on to question number 3. And it's kind of ironic that Artemis Fowl ended up in there because while I did fucking hate that movie, one of the very few bright spots in it, and I take that lightly because it wasn't that bright, he wasn't in it very much, was Colin Farrell, who I think is an actor who unfortunately has a knack of picking fucking awful films but still being good in them. So when we do get good films from him, it is a bit of a pleasure. And so the question that I asked here is to focus on multiple good films. Is which of the given director options has made the best work with Colin Farrell? Now, this is obviously a variation of a similar question we've asked in the past, where I go through an actor's filmography, I pull out the directors that they have worked with more than once, I give them to the players, and they have to choose from there who they think is kind of the best director pairing based on the films they've made. Colin Farrell has less options than some of our previous people, but they are scrolling below. They are Yorgos Lanthimos, Martin McDonagh, and Joel Schumacher. So each competitor had the chance to pick one of those 3 guys and build an argument around it. With that said, though, we're going to go ahead and get into it as I bring back up your timer. Abel, you are up first on this one, and it will start when you begin speaking.
I'm going to hold my phone like this. Is that cool?
However's easiest for you, man. As long as I can hear you, I'm okay with however you hold it.
Yeah. Yo, listen. I'm not gonna shit talk movies anymore, okay? I actually love Colin Farrell as an actor. And my personal favorite movie of his is In Bruges. Now listen, Colin Farrell's had a very topsy-turvy career, okay? He's gone from like box office bombs to indie darlings and everything in between. But he is a great actor. Like sometimes it doesn't show through the material that he's given, but he's actually a very like earnest actor. He can give such like a raw and heartfelt performance. And I think his most earnest performance in his career has come in the form of Ray, an unsuccessful hitman hiding out in his own personal hell in Bruges. This is such a great little um, dark comedy. And what it does best, in my opinion, is it really just lets him shine.
All right, that is time. And only because you didn't say the director's name, I am going to say it, although given the reaction of some of our judges,
Martin
I think
McDonagh,
they know who it is. Yeah, it is the director of In Bruges as well as Seven Psychopaths. Martin McDonagh is his choice. All right, so with that said, Shaun, I go over to you. Time starts when you begin speaking.
The director I picked is, I might butcher his name, but it's Yorgos Lanthimos. I picked him because the question is, which director has made the best work with Colin Farrell? Colin Farrell has made The Lobster and Killing of a Sacred Deer with Yorgos. Unlike his previous films, I feel like Yorgos works the best with Colin, and Colin has produced the best work with him. Best work as in films and Colin's acting within those films, especially those two films. When you look at acting, Colin's acting styles within those two films, it's very clear that the director wants him to act a certain way, has a certain vision for those characters in those two films. And you see Colin Farrell, he's very different in these two films. It's very unique. When I look at his other films, it feels like Colin Farrell is just in those films acting like Colin Farrell. But in The Lobster and Killing of a Sacred Deer, it's very much Colin doing his best work in those films, and Yorgos gets that out of him.
All right, and that is time. Abel, I head back to you for 2 minutes of Martin McDonagh.
What I love about his movies under Martin McDonagh is he really gets to shine as the actor that he really is. And the movies are almost like subservient to how good he is as an actor, as that raw, passionate, heartfelt actor. He can portray so many little emotions just like with his face, with his demeanor, with certain silences that he takes. Whereas like his movies under Lanthimos, like they're great as movies, but he plays very restrained, and like I feel like the themes and the ideas of the movie really like overshadow his character and overshadow him as an actor. Like his character in those movies is more of a vehicle for the plot than the other way around. Whereas in Bruges, the whole movie is like built around his character arc. He has some like heartbreakingly earnest scenes, and his rapport with Brendan Gleeson's Ken works on so many levels. He gets to be vulnerable. He gets to be darkly comedic. He gets to be a little violent and scary at times. He gets to show such a wide range of emotions. Whereas really in Lanthimos' work, he is just like subservient to the plot. He needs to play like very like down characters. Like he's very introverted, like very restrained, and that's just something that I don't know, I don't feel like it brings the best out of him. It brings the best out of the movie, of course, for sure. The movies are awesome, but him as an actor, I just feel like he doesn't get to shine. He doesn't get to like actually be the actor that he is in those movies. Whereas in Martin McDonagh's, especially in Bruges, because like I love Seven Psychopaths, and it is great as a comedy, but in Bruges, that is just Colin Farrell at his absolute best, his most vulnerable, his most darkly comedic, and just all around a great actor.
And time. All right, Shaun, back to you for 2 minutes.
In Bruges is not Colin Farrell at his best. It's just a good film, a really good film. No one talks about the acting of Colin Farrell in Bruges. They talk about the film as a whole, the story, the plot, everything is good about that film. No one highlights Colin Farrell as the best actor in that film. You could get a bunch of people to replace Colin Farrell in that film. My opponent's not talking about Seven Psychopaths at all. It seems like he's just in love with In Bruges. I've heard nothing about Seven Psychopaths, which I don't think is a good film at all, especially when we're comparing the body of work, his best work, with Yorgos's two films that Colin Farrell has been in. The Lobster is also a darkly comedic film. Like, it has a lot of funny odd moments in it. It hits some of those same comedic chops that Colin Farrell hit in Bruges, but now it's up to a different level because he's playing it in such a different way. You could say Colin Farrell is playing the most Colin Farrell type actor in Bruges, but in Killing of a Sacred Deer and The Lobster, he's playing the mature actor he is now, because Colin Farrell has matured over the years into a serious heavy hitter actor, and you could see that especially in Killing of a Sacred Deer. Just the way he interacts with, I can't remember the actor's name, but the kid who
Barry
Colin
Keoghan.
Farrell kind of met. Pardon?
Barry Keoghan.
But yeah, just the way he interacts with him, their chemistry throughout that film. It's such a serious film where Colin's acting is really, really highlighted. It's one of his best performances. I don't think of Colin Farrell as Colin Farrell in that film, but in Bruges and especially Seven Psychopaths, all I see is Colin Farrell. Especially with Seven Psychopaths, I feel like the movie's just trying to be smart on a deep like a pseudo parodying classical just parodying classic Hollywood tropes, and it doesn't really work. I feel like it's trying to have dialogue from a Quentin Tarantino film, but it just fails. His two films, Yorgos, are way superior with the body of work.
All right, we're gonna go on to the 4-minute opening debate. God, I hope it's as passionate as the one about Artemis Fowl. Guys, you have 4 minutes on the clock. Time starts when you begin speaking.
See, you don't get to have any fun with Colin Farrell in Lanthimos' film. You get to have so much fun. You get to really live with him in Bruges. I mean, I'll concede Seven Psychopaths is a little bit more of a simple movie, but then again, he really does a lot for that movie. He kind of carries that movie together with Sam Rockwell. He is like the straight man, Sam Rockwell is the crazy guy, and they really carry the movie together. In Bruges, it is pretty much all Colin Farrell. It is his entire arc that really carries that movie, and he gets to show so many levels, such a wide range. He is so vulnerable at times, and he gets to be really awkward.
Speaking of vulnerable, you see how vulnerable he is in Killing of a Sacred Deer. Spoiler alert, when he has to kind of blindly choose which family member to kill at the end of that film, that's him being super vulnerable and seeing how the family and how Colin Farrell has to deal with that just before the credits. That's him being vulnerable.
But I feel like that movie really, the plot, really overshadows, and the themes really overshadows Colin Farrell. He's like a vehicle for the plot in that movie. Whereas in Bruges, it is really built around him as an actor and as a character. And that to me, speaks a lot more to me personally as an audience member.
And I feel like personally within Bruges, people more so like the film because of the plot, because of the story, not so much because of Colin Farrell. I disagree that the films he's done with Yorgos that he's just a vehicle. I think he brings so much, especially in The Lobster. You've never seen a deadpan Colin Farrell act before.
But he's
all his little choices are so unique and great in that film.
Any of his other wider range of emotions in that movie. He just plays one character the whole movie.
But then you see that in Killing of a Sacred Deer, you see the other ranges of emotion.
But he doesn't
see how he's treating the kid in the beginning of the film, and then goes to being scared and terrified of that kid in the end of the film. And again, we're not talking about Seven Psychopaths at all.
Of Harry Waters, a Ray Fiennes character in Bruges. He's also terrified of him. It is just the most well-rounded of an actor I've ever seen him be in that movie. He does everything in that one movie as that character.
In that one film! You're just talking about the one film. I'm talking about the two films. And the question is, who has he made the best work with, right?
Yeah,
and you're just talking about in Bruges.
He made his best movie in his entire career under Martin McDonagh, which is in Bruges. That should really count for something.
But again, the question is best work. It's not best film. It's not his sole best film.
He made his best movie under Martin McDonagh.
Killing of a Sacred Deer and The Lobster are amazing films that put Yorgos on the map and set him up.
They put him on the map as a director. They put the movies were really critical darlings, but it didn't really. To me, I don't feel like it did a lot more for Colin Farrell's career.
I don't think In Bruges didn't do anything for his career either. It's
No,
a
but
niche
if you go
community
back
that
and
loves
watch
In
that movie,
Bruges.
he
It's not
gets
like
to
it
do
made a ton at the
everything.
box office.
He gets to do everything in that movie. Like he just shows the entire range of his acting chops. Like he can do everything.
I disagree with
Those
you.
are
In
all
that
in
film,
the
he's
movie.
just being Colin Farrell. He's being the same Colin Farrell that I saw him be in Phone Booth and in Daredevil.
Not
It's the
at
same
all.
person.
Not at all. He gets
He's
to be
not
vulnerable.
he's just acting
He
like
gets to be
himself.
awkward when he tries to hook up with that girl. He gets to be like really comedic and funny. He just does it all. He
Awkward?
gets to
Look
be
at how
scary.
awkward he is in The Lobster. Like that's the
Yeah, but he already did that in Bruges.
he didn't do like The Lobster. No one has directed Colin Farrell like Yorgos has directed him, okay? Like he's never performed and acted like that in those two films. If you look back at his entire career, he's a completely different actor in those films.
Yeah, and so I'm saying the most Colin Farrell that he's ever been is in Bruges. That is the best he's ever done as the actor that he is. Like the actor that really, so the guy that really brought the most Colin Farrell out of Colin Farrell is Martin McDonagh.
Again, you're only bringing it up In Bruges, and the question is which director has made the best work with Colin Farrell?
Yeah,
Not the best film.
movie.
It's
He made the
body
best
of
movie in his
work.
career with Martin
And time. We certainly delivered, guys. All right, we got 1 minute left to go for the both of you. Abels, yours is up first when you speak.
That's me.
Yes.
I'm saying in his body of work, he's made a lot of movies, this kid. And his best movie in his career was In Bruges under Martin McDonagh. This was the movie that took him from like the guy who was playing Alexander in a terrible Oliver Stone movie, the guy who was doing like really bad like Total Recall remakes. And it really made sure that he got to shine as an actor again. He got to be so many things in that movie. He did everything. The movie's so tense. He gets to shine throughout the runtime, and he gets to show every wide range of emotions that he can be. Sure, he's like really restrained, like an awkward character in The Lobster, and he gets to play like this really conservative family man and Killing of a Sacred Deer. But that's not really who Colin Farrell is. You get to see Colin Farrell for everything that he brings to the screen, everything that he can bring to a movie Martin McDonagh got out of him in Bruges. That's why I'm saying that is his best film. The best film he made in his career was with Martin McDonagh.
All right, and that is time. Shaun, you got 1 more minute on the clock. Time starts when you speak.
Again, the question is which director has made the best work with Colin Farrell? All I've heard is how In Bruges is a really good movie with Colin Farrell in it. Again, I don't think people talk about In Bruges as Colin Farrell at the peak of his acting abilities. It's just a good film with a good story. That's why people like it. I think it's a very niche amount of people, just like Killing of a Sacred Deer and The Lobster are also very niche films. But in those films, you see the director who has directed Colin Farrell and has had the best work with Colin Farrell because of that director, because of the variety of acting that Colin Farrell has to do in those two films. When you look at Colin Farrell in The Lobster and how awkward and deadpan his character is, and then the same director directing him in The Killing of a Sacred Deer, and how he has to go through all the emotions, being a family guy, dealing with this terrible, horrific thing that he did, having to make a very hard choice at the end of the film. Like, Martin could not have gone that out of Colin Farrell, and Seven Psychopaths sucked balls.
And time.
Woof.
All right. I'm going to go ahead and send both of you guys to the back as I will bring in our judges. Not a lot of fact checking on this one, just two small things. So the comment about the box office came up, and while I didn't bother doing math to figure out what made money, for what it's worth, none of these films did well at the box office, all things considered. However, ironically enough, since the film that was brought up was In Bruges actually did make the most money out of these four films at $34.5 million. So still not a crazy success, but it did technically make the most money. Also, the other small fact check is, while I would agree with you that the four films like these are the reasons that Colin Farrell can get away from doing crappy blockbusters, the Total Recall remake actually came out 4 years after In Bruges in 2012, which means including films like Winter's Tale and Artemis Fowl, no matter how good he gets, he still can't get away from the crap. With that said, though, Will, I go to you first. Who gets your vote, and what was the main thing that sold you?
See, this was a very tough one for me because the work that he's done with those two directors, with Yorgos and with Neil McDonough, are among some of my favorite films of all time. And so it was really hard for me, like, just listening. I was just listening to all the intricate arguments that they had. I agreed with some of their points. I disagreed with some of their points, but one of them shot themselves in the foot a little bit. And unfortunately, that was Abel, so I had to go with Shaun.
All right, Mr. Diaz, I go down to you as concise as you can get it for me. Who gets your vote, and what sold you?
Besides seven psychopaths slander I do not appreciate, I went with Shaun. I think in the end he stayed true to the question of what that body work with Colin Farrell, and after talking for many times, then he about touch one from one, talking to the other one, not thinking close to the person being at. So Shaun won in the end.
All right, judges, thank you so much. I'm going to go ahead and send you to the back, though, because your winner by a final score of a 3-0 knockout is Shaun Hunter.
Woo!
Coming in big. That is a big play, Shaun. Abel is no slouch. He did, obviously, coming in as a rookie against someone like Shannon, who took Amaru Moses, who's done really well so far, to the wire. It was a tough, he won a tough game. So knocking him out, I know a couple of people have made comments about how you could have possibly had a knockout against Peck. That third round was a very iffy situation. But I feel like this is a more validating knockout for you. How are you feeling?
Yeah, no, I'm feeling pretty good. Part of me is happy I got the knockout. Part of me wishes it went to the fourth question because that was the one I prepared for the most. But I guess it's okay. I still won. So.
Well, I guess there's no way to make up for that than to be the guy who won the game. If you'd lost and not gone to it, that probably would feel worse. So absolutely, man, it was a great match. I mean, Abel was no slouch. He certainly put up some great arguments, some unique angles in this. But you took him at every level. You hit him on everything he said, and you came out with the W. And you're going into the semifinals of the tournament. So that means more than one thing for you. So first off, you go into the semifinals, and you're going to be taking on Matt Beer, who himself is on a bit of a good tear here. He's won his last two matchups in this bracket, obviously, both by knockout. So the last thing that I think is going to happen is a knockout. I think it's going to be a good game. But by also making it to the semifinals, it means that if any point in the rest of the tournament you do lose a match, you will get a second chance opportunity to go for the title. So that way we can use this tournament to kind of make more than one contender out of it. So you have secured yourself in some fashion a path to the title as long as you win enough matches. How are you feeling?
Cool. No, it's feeling pretty good. That's great news. I'm having so much fun. I'm looking forward to facing against Matt, who might be spying on me right now. I don't know for sure, but no, I think it'll be a good match.
He absolutely is, because that's the one thing. As Matt dips slowly off camera, what are you doing, dude? What are you?
Yeah, I don't know what.
There's no one here.
Yeah.
What are you talking about?
Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Matt Beer is here with us. Man, you two guys back to back off of great matches, some good knockouts, and now you're going up against each other. Do you guys have quick words before we move on?
I feel like it's been building to this moment because clearly in the losers bracket, which, I called the Aaron put us in really difficult situations, meaning he put you up against Grant and then put me in at a last second match against Mehdi.
Keep whining, bitch.
I had like 5 minutes to prepare, maybe 3. But no, it's been building up to this. Obviously, we're the two best debaters in this bracket, so I feel like it's only fair that we should be facing against each other. Although I think this should be a championship matchup, but it is what it is.
Yeah, well, it's not. And for the guy who's won 2 matches and 2 knockouts, I think my last minute matchup for you actually kind of worked out
Yeah.
favorably. But with that said, I'm gonna go ahead and get rid of Matt. And Shaun, congratulations, man. This was a great
Thank
game by
you.
yourself, and look forward to having you back. I'm gonna go ahead and sit you in the back for now, and bring in your opponent, who is back on his computer, the one and only Dutch Artemis Fowl. Abel,
How you doing,
you
brother?
listen, man. The thing about Movie Battleground is, I think, without calling anybody out, there are performances where I think, to the point of even the debater would admit it was a weak performance. But because it's a simple thing of we only tally who won, we don't keep tally on how many good things you say, this looks much worse than I think your performance actually was. The sponsored by Heineken debate from yourself tonight was a very solid one. I think you brought a lot of fire to this, and it just didn't go your way. How are you feeling?
That's all good, bro. Like, for real. I mean, I enjoyed myself. Like, I had a good time. Like, that's what this is about, right?
Absolutely.
To be honest, I'm happy Shaun won. Like, this is no, like, I'm not being weird here. This is no like shade or disrespect or anything. But like, my heart really isn't in this as much as I feel like his might be. So I'm glad he's moving on in this tournament, and he gets to like be really passionate about movie debates, which is great. That is awesome. I'm just like a drunk Dutch guy who got called up to speak shit about Kenneth Branagh. That is my answer.
And that is exactly what you did tonight. In addition to, I mean, you did give a lot of praise to In Bruges, so I think it kind of balances out. So if we learned one thing, it's that you hate Branagh and love In Bruges.
I don't actually like it. I don't know what I'm doing.
Well, whether or not you come back remains to be seen. I hope we'll have you back at some point in the future.
You might.
But for now, I will say have a great night. Since it's literally night for you, it's later than it is for us here.
Yeah, I feel like it's like 1 a.m. Oh, it's 12:30.
Yeah, it'll be later by the time this airs. So I'm gonna go ahead and send it back.
I don't know.
To you.
Yeah, exactly. Cool.
Send you this back. I'll see you next time.
Thanks for having me, bro.
Absolutely, man. And what a way to end this event, guys. 2 great matches back to back. Again, if you have not seen the first match, in which myself took on Noah McCausland on the other end of that bracket to slide into a semifinal slot, go check that out now that this one is wrapping up. But Shaun Hunter, he took a former champ to the limits. He had a very clean win over Jonathan Peck, and now he has a knockout on his record. Certainly building to look like one of the most impressive candidates in this 0-1 bracket. And it remains to be seen if he can get past one of the guys who all those years ago helped create the game with me. But on behalf of my fellow producers, on behalf of our 3 great judges, Chris Diaz, Will Cohen, and Stacey Morris, and on behalf of our competitors, Abel de Leeuw, and our winner tonight, Shaun Hunter. My name is Aaron Knoll. This has been a great Movie Battleground Blitz event, and we will see you next week with more Movie Battleground matches. Take care, everybody.